今天我来到美国内布拉斯加见一个刚从哈佛本科毕业的网友。每年从这个大农业州去哈佛上本科的人只有5个上下。我个人感觉内布拉斯加州的定位有点像青海省，位于内陆地区，地广人稀，存在感不高。而 Evan 的故乡50万人的奥马哈小城是这个州最大的城市。去年12月从哈佛毕业之后，他在做一些创业，也包括在中文互联网上发视频。今天我会跟他聊聊哈佛乃至整个美国的高等教育，作为一个小地方的人去大城市上学的感受，以及前2个月他去中国旅游的经历。
What do people think about Nebraska?
Yeah.
That there's nothing here?
Nothing here?
They think that I live on a farm. Like, Omaha has 1 million people. It's not the biggest place, but it's not nothing. It's not farmland.
Different from the cities in the East Coast.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not very urban. You know, it's a big town. It's definitely not a city. So I guess I'm from neither place. I'm somewhere in the middle.
How did you get to Harvard as someone from Nebraska?
Yeah, it's definitely a less common place to come from. There are private high schools in Massachusetts and New York that send more people to Harvard each year than the entirety of Nebraska. So it's definitely less popular, but definitely still possible. I was lucky enough to go to the first or second best high school in the state of Nebraska. So the educational bar was really high. And then I was also lucky enough to have parents that pushed me hard to get good grades, but I think more than that, to get involved outside of the classroom, and did almost everything that I could fit in my schedule. I played soccer for my school team, and for a club team outside of school. So that took a lot of time for sure. I was involved in the International Baccalaureate program at my school. It's like an international organization that provides curriculum for different schools. It's like advanced classes, basically. Not like volunteering for that took a lot of time outside of class. I joined a lot of interest-based clubs. Like I was in the philosophy club or robotics. And the thing that took maybe my most amount of time is that I had a dog sitting business. My soccer team took a trip to Italy, and it cost $2,800. And my parents were like, we'll give you $500, but that's it. I'm very stingy, and they're also very stingy. They taught me to be stingy. And so I had to make $2,300 in like 6 months. And I never had a job before. And also I didn't really have time for a job outside of class. This was like, I didn't have time for like a shift just because of all these activities. And so I had to find something entrepreneurial, I guess, to do to make money. And the thing I first tried was babysitting, like taking care of people's kids. And it paid okay, but people's kids are very demanding, and you had to do a lot of work. So like, what could I take care of that's like less high maintenance? And I thought dogs would be a good idea, because people go on vacation, they don't know where to take their dog. And I could just go to their house and play video games and study, and their dog, you know, I could get food or water for a long time. I ended up dog sitting for 15 or 20 people. We did advertisements on Facebook and other social media platforms. Messaged pretty much every adult that I knew. Passed out business cards to people I saw with their dogs, and was able to make enough money to go on the trip, and then continued doing that for the rest of my time in high school. I guess that was like my first like entrepreneurial pursuit, and definitely kind of what sparked my interest in entrepreneurship.
Soccer, you would not do this entrepreneurship. And without this entrepreneurship, you probably won't go to college.
All from soccer, yeah.
Yeah.
Just because I wanted to go to Italy.
So what did you write in your admission letter?
In my admission
Application
to Harvard.
Yeah.
I talked about stuttering. I've spoken fluently this whole time, and you might not know, but I was a person who stutters, and I still have to think about it. I did speech therapy for over 10 years, between the ages of 4 and 15, with a private speech therapist, as well as a speech therapist at my elementary and middle schools. Another thing that I'm just incredibly lucky for and didn't do anything to achieve, kind of like my parents pushing me academically. I didn't do anything to deserve that. It just happened to me. I just happened to be born into a school district that had a speech therapist for me, you know, something that definitely could have changed the course of my life if I didn't have that. Like if I had been born in a school district with less money, or, you know, even like a few miles away in a different school. And so not every speech therapist has even ever worked with someone who stutters before, just because there's, you know, a million different speech impediments. And I would just happen to be lucky to go to a school that had one that knew what stuttering was. And so many factors contributed to me like being able to speak fluently right now.
Oh, okay.
And most of them were out of my control.
Yeah. But it's hard to tell from how you speak now.
No, I was incredibly lucky. That's another thing I got lucky about. Some people who stutter can work with a speech therapist for 20, 30 years and still stutter on every sentence that they say. Everyone's kind of stutter is different.
Okay.
So all of these factors kind of led me to where I am now. Anyway, I tell myself I'm lucky every day. And I wrote about kind of my journey through speech therapy and about kind of finding my voice, literally finding my voice as in learning how to communicate without stuttering, but also metaphorically finding my voice, just because stuttering is a big emotional and mental blocker for people. It causes them to self-limit or, think like, I couldn't do X or Y because I can't speak fluently. And honestly, the main battle that people who stutter have to confront is the mental barrier. The physical stuff kind of takes care of itself once you find acceptance. Anyway, it was really easy to write about because it's something I've been dealing with for my entire life.
You did not find any third-party institutions? Because it's very common for Chinese kids. They want to go to Harvard or even any university programs they want to
It's
find.
actually more common than you'd expect with American kids. I know people that have really rich parents and their college essays were written by agencies. And that is not something I even knew existed before I got to Harvard. I felt like there was definitely a learning curve my first and second years of college, kind of understanding understanding elite society in the United States. Because in Omaha, even the richest people in Omaha, they're not like the richest people in New York City. Like in terms of resources, but also in terms of just temperament or attitude. Everyone in Nebraska is very nice, regardless of if you're from the country or from the city. We say Nebraska nice. The culture in East Coast cities is way less friendly. If I'm walking down the street in Nebraska and I pass someone I don't know, I'll probably tell them good morning or at least nod at them or smile. And in Boston, no one cares about anyone else. No one is nodding to me and saying good morning that I pass in Harvard Yard, which is fine. But it's definitely a place where you need to have a thicker skin, less community, less friendliness. On the flip side, there's also way more opportunity at a place like that. Opportunity to study or work. What I think I would have missed out on at Nebraska was that most of the people that go to Nebraska are from Nebraska or from places that are like Nebraska. And there would have been a lot of people that looked like me and had very similar backgrounds to me. And I think my favorite part about Harvard was the diversity of people there. Both in terms of background, but also in terms of culture or country, interests. I think the most important things that I learned at Harvard were probably the people that I met. I'm sure these people are going to do incredibly amazing things. They didn't teach me anything that I couldn't have learned at a different school. Nothing in my introductory to computer science course at Harvard was markedly different than an introductory to computer science at the majority of other schools. It's just the environment that I existed in. And I definitely think it kind of expanded my own personal boundaries to step out of my comfort zone and move away for college. Nebraska is a stellar school, but I'm glad I left.
How many schools did you apply to?
2.
Just Harvard and the University of Nebraska?
Yeah.
It's very uncommon.
I know. Most people at Harvard, when I told them that, were surprised.
Okay.
Because people there apply to 15 or 20.
Yeah. And you will get a scholarship.
Well, yeah, I could have gone there for free. And I was very happy with the program. And I had a list of about 10 or 12 schools that I wanted to go to. And then a couple months later, I was like, do I really want to go to these 5? We'll cut them out. Okay, I have 5 left. Applied to Nebraska, applied to Harvard. Had 3 more to apply to. I was like, do I really want to go to these 3? Nah.
Why you chose to also apply to University of Nebraska?
My entire family has gone to Nebraska. So my dad went there for law school. My mom was a college student there. My brother graduated from college there 4 or 5 years ago, and my sister is a current student there. So everyone in my family went to Nebraska. Also, number 1 or number 2 destination for high school students that come out of Nebraska. So it just felt very natural to apply there, and I felt very comfortable there. And then also the computer science program that I was really good. So I would have been happy there.
Chinese kids, they usually prefer to apply to the most prestigious schools. People
always look for prestigious schools, or they have a strong attachment to the state college?
I think it definitely depends on the person. State college is really attractive because it's more affordable. It's more safe. People from Nebraska are obviously familiar with Nebraska, so it feels homey. I think there are a group of students that are concerned with prestige and concerned with, getting into top schools. But I think we're only talking there, the top couple percent of students in their grade. Like my high school had 650 students per grade, and there were maybe 30 of us that were interested in applying to top schools. A lot of that is because I'm from Nebraska. Not so many people that come from Nebraska and go to a place like Harvard. In these prep schools in Boston, maybe like they send 20 kids to Harvard every single year. So that's only representative of where I'm from.
So have your family weighted the cost of going there compared to getting free tuition?
Definitely. Okay. That was a big consideration. And even after I got into Harvard, I still didn't accept the next day. I thought about it for about a month. I paid for my own school. So my parents obviously support me all the way and want me to succeed. They didn't go to Harvard, and it's my debt, essentially. So the decision I was making was like personally paying for Harvard, not just like forcing it on my parents, like actually me paying for it, or, a free education at a program that I was very confident in. So obviously with all of that context, the decision between Harvard and Nebraska doesn't become so clear. I mean, some people would obviously say like, well, it's Harvard, you can't say no. But it's something I did consider for a long time. I ultimately chose Harvard just because it felt like an impossible thing to turn down, and I'm definitely happy with my decision at this point. My main concern was just being in debt, but I'll make money, like the money will come back. And it's a lot of money to make back, but I'm always pushing myself to try new things and go for the coolest life experiences I can find. And it was a pretty cool life experience. So I'm very happy with the decision. COVID restrictions were definitely a big part of my first year at Harvard. We got tested 3 times a week and weren't allowed to have outsiders in our rooms, had security at all of the gates, in our own little bubble. I had never lived anywhere other than Nebraska. Just being so far away from home and in a foreign place was isolating and challenged me a lot. I became comfortable in the place. I got to know Boston better. I made a great group of friends, and that support network was great. I gained more clarity into what I wanted to study and started enjoying myself in class. I settled into my dorm and dorm culture in Harvard. So it all came together. But change is hard. Yes. I'm also curious about how their experience at Nebraska was as well. Whenever I would come back to Nebraska, I'd see so many people from high school. It was like a high school reunion. And it was just very different from, honestly, frankly, the isolating experience I had at Harvard. It's a very isolating place because it's very difficult and challenging, but also there's not a lot of people from Nebraska that go there. New city, new people, new experiences. So I had a lot to share coming back, but also I was very curious about kind of the polar opposite of that, which is something more comfortable and also something that had so many familiar faces around. I don't know if we really compare ourselves. I don't know if that's as much of a part of American culture. I know people that are happy with their decision to leave Nebraska, and I know people that are unhappy with their decision to leave Nebraska, and I know people that were happy to stay in Nebraska and that were unhappy to stay in Nebraska. So I think it's kind of a personal thing about it. It's honestly probably not as competitive as you would think. People are very focused on succeeding, but I don't think very many people there are focused on succeeding at the expense of their classmates. I never felt like pressure to compete against my classmates. I'm a naturally competitive person and I want to have cooler work experiences and get good grades, but I felt that motivation was more internal than external. So that's probably different than a lot of people might think, who would think at Harvard like probably everyone's like gunning for each other's throats. Why did I decide to go to China?
Yes.
I always wanted to have a big postgraduate trip after I graduated. And I thought for a long time that would be kind of backpacking through Europe. It's like a very common American thing to do after you graduate college, to like just get a backpack and stay in hostels across Europe. But I had the opportunity to go to Europe a few times I studied abroad in Spain, and I'd been to Europe a few times before that. And I've been lucky enough to travel quite a bit in my life, actually, and Asia in general is somewhere that I'd never been before. And I went to 3 countries on my trip. I went to Japan, South Korea, and China. China being the place where I spent the most time. Japan is probably the most represented Asian culture in American media. Americans are very curious about Japan, frankly. Like, people here love anime and sushi and video games and like so much of Japanese culture. South Korea, I didn't know too much about actually, but it was a nice. Stopping in Seoul was a nice in between. And then China, we spent close to 3 weeks in China. Not a lot of Americans go to China, and it's a very unique destination. And also just a country that I'm just naturally curious about, just because China is also represented in American media. And I want to experience things that people talk about. Based on the questions that I got from people in China, asking me about American perspective on China, I feel like people in China think that China is more negatively represented in America than it truly is. Okay. I mean, it definitely is seen as like a rival to the United States, and it's portrayed that way. But I personally had no like ill thoughts about China. And I feel like the average American also is similar to that. I mean, obviously there are people in both countries that hate the other country. I like going on trips where I can learn, and I like getting off the beaten path a bit. And China definitely felt like a place where I could learn a lot about the country I didn't know too much about. But yeah, trip of a lifetime. It was awesome.
Okay. So another thing many people don't talk about is how to get a Chinese visa.
Yeah.
You know, as Americans, you probably never experienced a visa experience.
Never. This is another thing that I would have had no idea how to do without my friend. A travel agency in Chinatown in Boston, downtown Boston. And we walked in, and everyone started speaking Mandarin to her, and she started speaking Mandarin back. I had no idea what I was doing. I just did everything they told me to. Sat at a table, filled out a form, communicating. I didn't know what was being said. All of a sudden, my friend told me, they need a picture of your face to send to the embassy or the consulate or something. And there can't be any hair on your forehead. And I was like, well, that's kind of complicated because I have a lot of hair on my forehead. And so we took water from a water dispenser, you know, like a water cooler, whatever you'll get. We put it into our hands and then slicked all my hair back so that they could get a picture of my face. Pushed all my hair back.
Okay.
And then show off my forehead.
So you were like this?
Yeah, that's basically it.
Can you do that?
Why?
Okay, you don't want to do that?
We don't like this. We parted my hair.
Oh, okay.
I probably look so stupid right now.
No, you look really good.
Oh, no.
You look, no, I think it's good. It's good.
I have too much hair. I'm getting a haircut next week. I need to get a haircut.
Do you recommend Chinese people to visit your state?
Maybe on like your 4th or 5th trip. No, actually. You know, if you want to see true America, yes. If you want to go have a touristy time, kind of like I probably did in China, just going to big cities, and you can have a great time in those places. If you're interested in learning about American culture, Omaha would be somewhat interesting. Maybe only for a couple days on a larger trip. Just because it's not the biggest place, and although there is kind of a window into American life, there's not a lot of like content here. I guess that's probably the wrong word, but definitely a city in the Midwest would be a worthwhile stop.
Yeah, you guys talk about Nebraska Pride.
Nebraska Pride. It's actually an interesting question because when I was from Nebraska and I'd only ever lived here, I felt somewhat connected to my state. Like everyone roots for the football team. You know, people talk about Nebraska nice. You know, people care about each other. But I never really felt like pride. I wouldn't have said pride. And as soon as I got to Harvard, and the first person, second person, third person, fourth person said, "Oh my God, I've never met anyone from Nebraska. Haha, do you live on a farm?" Or I would go up to someone and say, "Hey, I'm from Nebraska," and they'd be like, "Oh, Nebraska, really?" I was like, man, what the hell? My Nebraska pride shot up so much. You have no idea. It's like I got one too many negative reactions about Nebraska for me to say like, hey, it's like actually like a cool place. And now I'm Nebraska till I die for sure. Just like there's like differences in like words that are used. So the biggest example I can think of is like soda versus pop. So like Coca-Cola. Everyone in Nebraska says pop, and everyone in the Midwest says pop. And for the most part, outside of the Midwest, people say soda. And I can't tell you how many times I said pop at Harvard, and so I'd be like, haha, pop. And I'm never going to stop saying pop just because of that. I don't care if I live in New York for the rest of my life or live in California for the rest of my life. I'm never going to stop saying pop. I think maybe people look down on the Midwest maybe a little bit. You know, people get a little stuck up about being in the Northeast or being from California or being from Texas or from Florida or like these like notable places in the United States, and they look down on a place like Nebraska. So like it's a flyover state. Like no one's from Nebraska. There's nothing in Nebraska. I've heard all these things. Maybe I have a chip on my shoulder a little bit, but I'm never gonna stop saying pop.
So what do Nebraska people think about Boston people?
Well, it depends on who you ask in Nebraska. I think that generally people in Nebraska aren't so interested in having an opinion on somewhere like that, just because like people in Nebraska are nice. So it's like, oh, Boston, that's cool. I bet that would probably be the first thing that someone in Nebraska would say. But there's definitely people here that think they're stuck up, that people from big cities are stuck up. I'm not one of those people, and I'd say that's like a pretty big minority just because people aren't very judgmental here. But I know people here definitely think that living in a big city like New York or in a state like California would be like their worst nightmare. So those people definitely do exist. Warren Buffett is from Omaha. He's actually from like a mile or two away from here. He's worth like $150 billion, and you can just drive by his house. It's just a very normal house. I think it's the same house that he bought in like 1980 or something like that. He makes all that money and then just like never moves. Or like he still drives like a random Ford and goes to McDonald's every morning. Like very satisfied with his life. That's like classic Nebraska.
After 50 years?
I hope so. Well, I hope I find success. But regardless of if I find a crazy amount of success or not,
Okay.
I hope I'm still the same person.
Okay.
And I think Warren Buffett is very much still the same person as he was before.
That's where Nebraska is.
Yeah. Okay. Daily routine. Every day I wake up at 6. That's not too early.
Okay.
That's not super early.
You know, my grandpa wakes up at 6.
Oh no, my grandpa wakes up at like 4. Maybe it's just cultural thing.
Okay.
I try to leave my house by 6:30, and I go to the gym. Done by 7:30 or 8, I guess. In the mornings, I'll either film or edit, or I'm like a software engineer, so I'll write code. I'll have lunch at maybe noon or 1. After that, I'll be either filming, editing, or coding until maybe 4 or 5. I'm doing a workout challenge right now called 75 Hard, and each day you have to work out twice. So around when I'm done with that, I'll work out for a second time, usually in my backyard. I sound super disciplined right now, but I swear this isn't like, I'm not like the most disciplined person. After that, I'll have dinner. Hopefully with my mom or dad, but sometimes they aren't home because they both work really hard. At night, I'll either hang out with my friends. That's fun. I like to read. I'm reading a book called SPQR right now. It's like a history book.
You show me.
Oh, no, that was Atomic Habits.
Okay.
I'm reading 2 books right now, I guess.
Okay.
I'll try to get to bed by like 10 p.m., 10:30 maybe. I think yesterday I went to bed at 11, so sometimes I fudge the numbers there a bit. But generally, most of my days look the same.
Okay. What do you guys like to have fun when you hang out at night?
We like to play video games. Sometimes there's a lot of basketball on TV right now, so sometimes we'll go to a bar and watch a basketball game. I don't drink alcohol, but I'll have a soda. I'll have a Diet Coke normally.
No, you have a pub.
I'll have a pop. Yes, exactly. Hey, you caught me in my saying soda after I said I would never stop saying pop. That's funny.
Okay.
I don't drink alcohol, but I'll have a pop. It's a part of this 75 Hard challenge.
Okay. But you still like drinking?
Drinking is fun. I think I like drinking less than I used to. And I think even after the challenge is over, I'd like to just not, or like very rarely. But I haven't drank in about a month.
Bar or bowling?
Bar, we've gone bowling before. We'll have a fire, like a fire pit in the backyard. Maybe we'll play board games or go play pickleball somewhere. But you're right, there's not like a wealth of opportunity to do activities in Omaha. So it's kind of us making our own fun.
Are they both mostly your high school friends?
Yeah, so in Omaha, definitely.
Okay.
A lot of my friends from high school have stuck around here. And most of my college friends are in New York. So if I move to New York, I'll be hanging out with them.
Okay. A random guy, even if you went to Harvard.
Sure.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I know. I think so too. Okay. I wouldn't want them to treat me any differently. Harvard is a cool thing, but I'm still Evan, right? Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're still Omaha people.
I'm still alone.